In subtraction, we also need a common denominator. So here we do have it, m minus 1. So I'm just going to copy the denominator, m minus 1. On the top, I have a 2m minus m plus 3. Keep in mind I put inside parentheses because I'm saying I'm subtracting that whole thing. So just looking at the top, I have, let me distribute the negative 1. I have 2m minus m minus 3. Once again, I'm just working the top. Simplify the top if possible, and that simplifies to m minus 3. The bottom, I have n minus 1. Nothing cancels out, so that's my answer. Looking at here, my least common denominator will be an x and an x minus 2. Notice I'm including both factors. Now, from those two factors on my first fraction, it seems like I'm missing the x. That's the factor that I'm missing. From the two factors that I need on the second fraction, I'm missing the x minus 2. So let me rewrite this as 9 times x minus 3 times x minus 2. Notice how I call that negative 3. Okay. Just looking at the top, I have 9x minus 3x plus 6. Just looking at the top. That simplifies to 6x plus 6. I can factor a 6 out, and I have x plus 1. Looking at the bottom, I have an x and an x minus 2. Nothing cancels out, so that's pretty much it. Now here, I can rewrite the second denominator, my 5 minus x. I can rewrite that as negative 1 x minus 5, right? We learned that a few sections ago. So my denominator, my least common denominator, will be a negative 1 times x minus 5. Seems like on my first fraction, I'm missing the negative 1. Seems like on my second fraction, I'm not missing anything. So I have 3x times a negative 1 minus, I'm still going to put 2x minus 25. So just working the top, I have negative 3x minus 2x plus 25, which is better known as negative 5x plus 25. Once again, I'm just working the top. Now let me factor a negative 5 out. So I have negative 5 times x minus 5. My common denominator at the bottom, I have a negative 1, and I have a x minus 5. Cancel out the x minus 5, cancel out the negative, 5 over 1. I'm just going to call that 5. Now here, to my first fraction, the denominator, I can see is x minus 1 twice. My second fraction, my denominator is x minus 1, x plus 1. So my least common denominator will be x minus 1, x minus 1, x plus 1. From those three factors, on the first fraction, I'm missing the x plus 1. From those three factors, on the second fraction, I'm missing an x minus 1. So on the top, I have 6x times x plus 1. Minus 1 times x minus 1. Just working the top, I have 6x squared plus 6x minus 1x plus 1, which simplifies to 6x squared plus 5x plus 1. I can split my middle term because I can think of two numbers that multiplied equals 6, but added equals to 5. We learned how to factor it back in chapter 6. I'm just going to skip to how it factors, and it factors to 2x plus 1 and 3x plus 1. Now, I know at the bottom, for space-wise, let me rewrite it here at the bottom. 2x plus 1 and 3x plus 1. So my factors on top. And you know at the bottom I have x minus 1, x minus 1, x plus 1. Nothing cancels out. I'm good. Lastly, looking at this one, I know it's a little different on your PowerPoints, but this is how it's supposed to be. Looking at my first fraction, I can factor that as q minus 5, q plus 1. Looking at my second fraction, I can factor that as q minus 5, q minus 3. Looking at my denominator, my least common denominator will be, my factors would be q minus 5, q plus 1, and q minus 3. Seems like from those three factors on my first fraction, I'm missing the q minus 3. I'm even going to write it over here. On my second fraction, it seems like I'm missing the q plus 1. So on the top, I have q times q minus 3 from the first fraction, minus 3 times q plus 1. Notice I brought out the negative to the top. Just looking at the top alone, get rid of parentheses, we have q squared minus 3q. Minus 3q minus 3. That simplifies to q squared minus 6q minus 3. I cannot factor it, so I'm just going to leave it at that. At the bottom, my factors are q minus 5, q plus 1, q minus 3. Nothing cancels out, so I'm good.